We're now some 40 years, more than 15 million units, and 6 full model generations into the astonishingly successful life story of the BMW 3 Series. This is the new one, the 7th one, a car that a great many people who do a great many UK motorway miles every year will have been waiting for. You know, even though we're generations deep now into X1s and X3s and 1 Series, this is still the most important and the biggest selling car that BMW makes. You can buy one in March 2019, and today we're going to drive this 320d on the road and an M340i on the track.
Before we start, don't forget to subscribe below if you enjoyed this video and click the bell to turn on notifications. This time around, new really does mean new for what's probably the world's defining compact executive saloon car. BMW has switched this car onto the lightweight aluminium and steel cluster architecture platform used by its bigger saloons. It has made the 3 Series a few inches longer, about half an inch wider than the last car. The interior has had a big redesign, more on that later. The car's suspension and steering systems have been widely redesigned and respecified, and the familiar range of 4 and 6 cylinder petrol and diesel engines will feature, some of them all new, and others having been given thorough overhauls.
What do you think? The pictures have been out a while now, it's been at a couple of motor shows. Fair to say the reaction has been a little bit mixed. Some people think it's great. Great looking car. Other people, they kind of take issue with a few things on it. Maybe the grille's too big, the headlights aren't quite right, wheels, bit blingy maybe. Generally, it's just a slightly overwrought, fussy kind of surfacing treatment for a 3 Series. I have to say, I've got a foot in both camps on this. I think it's one of the better looking saloon cars around at the moment, but we hold BMW to a very high standard for design, don't we? And I don't think this car has got the perfect proportions of like an E30 or an E46, or even, dare I say, an Alfa Giulia. It looks fine when the sun's shining on it like this, on a sort of a grey morning covered in dirt in Basingstoke. Well, we'll wait and see. Right, we'll start on the 320d, shall we? That's the important one after all. There's a few technicalities to cover before we crack on. The 4-cylinder engine in this car is new. Instead of using twin-scroll turbochargers like the last one, it uses 2 sequential turbochargers, a big one and a little one. And it makes the same peak power and peak torque as the last 2-litre did in the 320d, but it's alleged to be more efficient and more responsive.
In the 320d, peak power is 187 horsepower and peak torque is 295 pounds-foot. You can have 2-litre turbo petrol power in the 255 horsepower 330i, or a 3-litre turbo straight-six engine in either the 330d or in the M340i that I'll be driving on track later.
And you know, given it's only a 4-cylinder diesel, I think the engine's pretty strong. It's a 4-cylinder diesel, so it's always going to be more about torque than power. It's never going to sound that great, we know that. But judged by the right standards, it actually revs really cleanly, pretty much all the way to the red line at 5,000. And it provides a really nice broad spread of torque. You can sort of tell that maybe BMW hasn't got the refinement measures in this car that it puts in the bigger saloons like 5 Series, because the engine sounds a little bit gruff at times. When you work it, when you rev it, yeah, you can tell it's a 4-cylinder diesel. It's not the most refined engine of its kind, but then BMW's, they've never been outstanding in that respect. It's fine. It just sounds like a 4-cylinder diesel, but it's a good one. Coming on to chassis and suspension, there's a bit more of a departure to report there. So yes, the car is bigger than the last 3 Series, got a longer wheelbase, but the front track has actually grown in greater proportion.
And beyond all that, you've got stiffer springs, stiffer anti-roll bars, stiffer mountings, more negative camber on the front axle, and all of that's going on below a body structure that's 25% more rigid than that of the last 3 Series.
And that's what gives BMW permission to stick up the chassis rates without compromising the ride, hopefully. The really innovative thing in the chassis are what BMW calls lift-related dampers. Now, they're not adaptive dampers as such, but they do have little individual structures within the reservoirs that actually provide more damper support at the extremes of the travel. So at full compression, at full rebound, the dampers just work a little bit harder for the car, and that allows them to perhaps be a little bit more laid back and fluent right in the middle of travel, and that provides more ride comfort. That's the theory anyway.
If you don't want those, you can have shorter, firmer M Sport suspension springs, which also come with firmer anti-roll bars, yet more negative camber for those front wheels, and variable sports steering.
And then beyond that, if you want to go even further, you can have adaptive M Sport suspension with the proper adaptive dampers with the CVD. Although by and large, 3 Series buyers don't tend to go quite that far, which is interesting, isn't it? The other thing BMW's done, it's sort of spaced out the ratios in the 8-speed automatic gearbox that the car gets. So the shorter ones, the lower ones are shorter, the higher ones are taller. And at times, maybe when you're using manual mode, sometimes you feel like you're in the wrong gear. You know, you're a gear higher than you expect to be. And it can feel a bit weird sometimes when you're just sort of tooling around town in like 4th and 5th. But you leave it in drive, it's really slick, works really well. And apparently BMW's done a lot of work on the 6-speed manual box that's in this car as standard. So it'll be interesting to see what that's like when we get a chance.
Right, so the crux of the matter, how's the ride and handling?
Spot on, I would say. Better in respect to handling, maybe a little bit of a trade-off on the ride, but a perfectly acceptable one, the right one, I would say. So yeah, there's a firmness to the ride. I mean, you almost wouldn't describe it as firmness. It's never coarse. It's just a little bit excitable. You know, it wants to deal with bigger inputs quickly and then get on with it. And the trade-off is a car that handles really, really nicely. It's precise as you turn it in. It's balanced as you drive it through. It feels classically rear-driven. It's kind of everything you want a 3 Series to be, and it's not too dialed up. So the initial off-centre steering response is fairly gentle, actually. You can feel the front tyres load up, you get lots of confidence, and then off you go. You're just sort of enticed to drive it on quicker and quicker and to have a lot of fun with it. And this is just the 4-cylinder diesel, right? This is impressive. Right, so we'll park up and we'll talk about interior. So this is the all-new interior for the 3 Series. First impressions, it's a really upmarket treatment in here. This is a sports spec car. It's obviously got the aluminium trim, but it looks really plush still. BMW have obviously noticed that they're up against a Mercedes C-Class and an Audi A4, and both of those cars are really upmarket cars all of a sudden, and this is the response, and it's pretty good. We've got digital instruments in front of us. You get elliptic gauges, speedometer on the left, rev counter on the right. The rev counter reads backwards. I'm not sure they're as easy to read as they might be, and they look a bit stylised, but you know, whatever floats your boat. All the controls are organised in what they call islands, so it's supposed to look neat and tidy as well as be easy to use. You're supposed to be able to find things very easily. I think you can. I prefer these drive mode buttons all individually selectable like that rather than a toggle, and still feels like a pretty small car inside, but I can sit behind me and I'm not a small lad, as you can see. So the car has BMW's latest iDrive 7 infotainment system in it. It's got a bigger touchscreen, it's all touchscreenable, and you can still use the iDrive rotary controller if you prefer. The new innovation about it is an all-new voice control system which allows you to speak really naturally to it as if it was another human being. And you can call it what you like. If you want to call it Charlie, you can call it Charlie. If you want to call it Kit, you can call it Kit. But it will always recognise, hey BMW.
Hello, what can I help you with?
Take me to the racetrack at Portimao. Okay then, welcome to the Algarve's most visited tourist attraction among the motoring journalist fraternity these days, Portimao circuit. And we're in the new top-of-the-range version of the 3 Series, the M340i. Now, this guy uses a newly developed version of the 3-litre straight-six twin-turbo motor that we've seen in the kind of upper-level 3 Series for a while. It's got 369 horsepower this time.
It produces 369 pounds-foot of torque, which makes for a 0 to 62 miles an hour acceleration claim of just 4.4 seconds.
In this car, you get the Active M Sport rear diff that you have to pay extra for as part of the other M Sport cars, 330i, 330d. Now 330i and 330d both ought to be pretty decent sports car. They've certainly got the makings of it, given that new active diff has been developed from the one on the outgoing M3. The interesting thing about this car is it's xDrive. It is 4-wheel drive. Now, by my reckoning, this is the first time, I think, since 1977 that BMW hasn't sold a standard drive version of the 3 Series with a 6-cylinder petrol engine.
Yeah, that kind of feels like a big change to me. Some people are going to be made just a little bit uncomfortable by that, aren't they?
I think what it means is this car better be damn good to drive. The handling better be spot on. So let's find out. feels pretty rear biased, I must say. This car has the optional adaptive damping. That comes at extra cost, so I've got it in Sport Plus. I guess that means the xDrive system is set up for the sportiest torque distribution anyway. It's fast, it's certainly fast, and I've got the DSC switched off just to see how poised, how rear driven this thing can feel when it wants to. So let's see, second gear corner, bit of gas, yeah, starting to move around a bit, and yeah, I would say it handles. I mean, we know this, don't we? We know four-wheel drive is nothing to be worried about when it comes to the kind of balance, the handling balance of a four-door saloon these days. We have seen evidence of this a lot recently. But normally we see it in proper M cars where you can just turn off the front drive shafts completely, or in Mercedes AMGs, or, you know, proper upper level performance sports saloons. That's not what this is. This is kind of the top of the normal range 3 Series, and technically I haven't really done anything to the four-wheel drive system. It's just being itself. It's just being the 3 Series four-wheel drive system, but it's being pretty adjustable, isn't it? It's sort of a step on from the active four-wheel drive systems that we've known. So you can just get a bit more attitude in the car, use a bit more opposite lock before the driveline starts shuffling torque forwards again and putting the car out the slide. It just feels more rear driven.
The natural cornering balance of the car is really good as well. It turns in really keenly. There's not a hint of understeer in it, and body control is great.
And the faster you go, kind of better the car gets. This is on 19, so it's optional wheel, sports tyre. I've been driving it pretty hard now for a while. The tyres are really holding on quite nicely. Brakes are standing up. And I think it sounds really good as well. I was listening to them roar up and down the pit straight before I got in. Job well done, I think, Munich. Honour is restored.
There you have it. BMW's defining compact executive saloon may not be quite as compact as it used to be, and it may not be quite as great to look at, though that depends on your point of view. But it's got a clearer sense of luxury and technological wizardry about it now than it ever has before, and despite its size, it also does what every generation of this car has done so well over the decades, by delivering a more engaging drive than you'll find in so many other saloons of this kind, and as ever, by convincing you more by what it does than what it is, that it might just be one of the very best cars in the real world. Stay tuned to Autocar's YouTube channel for more 3 Series content published just as soon as we can bring it to you. Subscribe now and you won't miss any of it.